I've shared with you before that I was born and raised in Peoria, Illinois, in central Illinois. Great place to grow up, great hometown, great home city. And one of the things that I remember is, as well as growing up there, I spent 8 years in the seminary for the Diocese of Peoria, high school and college. And so the church was always a big part of our lives growing up. And like so many places, I'm sure it was this way in New York and in other places too, as Catholic kids growing up, when somebody said, "Where are you from?" you didn't answer by your street or some other designator. It was always your parish. "Where are you from?" "St. Pat's." "Where are you from?" "St. John's," "Holy Family." It was all, that's how you identified yourself. You identified yourself by your parish. And on one of these days when I was home from the seminary, I was in college at the time, a good friend of mine had just been ordained to the priesthood and was assigned to the next parish over. We were members of St. Patrick's Parish with Monsignor Patrick O'Connor Culleton, born in Dublin and pastor in our parish for 40 years, from 1920 to 1960. Those were the days. But my friend had been assigned to the neighboring parish of St. John's, where another pastor of long standing was, Father Gordon. But he was a mere father. He wasn't a Monsignor. And of course we used to tease back and forth about that. But anyway, I went over to the rectory to see my friend. And of course in those days I didn't expect the pastor to answer the door. There were 4 priests in that rectory anyway. But there was Father Gordon, all in his, just in his glory. And of course he knew who I was because everybody knew all the seminarians, all the priests knew the seminarians. And so, "Oh, Mr. Dightwig." I said, "Yes, Father, I'm here to see Father so-and-so." And he goes, "Well, before I do that," he said, "how come you and your family don't come here?" And I didn't want to say, "Well, it's because you were the English parish, we're the Irish parish." I didn't say that. And he said, "You're on that street, you're on Shelley Street, and that's part of this parish, Mr. Knight. And I expect you and your family to be here." And I said, "Well, Monsignor Culleton says that our house is on this side of that alley, and that all the homes on that side of the alley belong to St. Patrick's Father." "Well, Monsignor and I will have a conversation." Meanwhile, "Father, could I see Father Smith?" Okay. But that notion of identity, of belonging, that being able to identify yourself, you know, that was kind of fun. It was kind of nice. But by saying that, we also get the opposite, don't we? We belong there, which means we didn't belong here. And there were people over here that didn't belong there. And so while we felt included, other people did not. Now, that's kind of a humorous way to get into what I want to talk about tonight about the readings, especially the gospel. Because the readings tonight are all about erasing human boundaries. Now think about this. The passage from Matthew that we just heard, what is Matthew trying to do, the writer of this gospel? We talked about this a little bit last week. This gospel was written in the mid-80s. So it's about 50 years from the time of the events taking place. And Matthew's not trying to just walk around and transcribe what he sees Jesus doing, because that's not what he's done. Okay? What is he facing? He's facing a community which is largely Jewish, but they're Jews who have become Christian. They're followers of Christ. And Matthew is trying to show them how that all fits together, that Christ is the Messiah. And he's also using that to talk to Gentiles, to non-Jews. He's trying to convince to become Christian and say, "Look, we have found the fulfillment of all of our dreams from the Isaiah that now say that he is the Christ. And you too can find salvation in him." And one of the earliest battles, the earliest debates that early Christians had was, how do you become a Christian? Do you first have to become a Jew and then become a Christian? St. Paul got involved in that, St. Peter got involved in it, and it was a huge debate in the early church. Do you have to become Jewish first in order to then become a Christian? Now, it's in the middle of all of that Matthew is writing. In the passage just before this gospel passage, there's a huge fight between Jesus and the scribes and Pharisees. They're taking Jesus to task because his disciples are not following Jewish law. And what Jesus says to them is, it's not about following the externals. It's about what comes out of one's heart by which someone is judged. That's what makes a person unclean, not by what goes in, by what comes out. But now something very interesting has happened. Jesus has now, it says, retired to the region of Tyre and Sidon. He's left the land of Israel. And he's gone into a foreign land. He's gone where Jews are the minority. That makes what he's about to do even more stunning. Because he and his disciples are not in the majority anymore. They're wandering in a foreign land where Jews are not looked highly upon. And what happens? One of the local women comes up to him and begs a favor. My daughter is plagued by a demon. And we see Jesus in this remarkable passage, first ignoring her, and then saying, I came for the children, and why should I give the food for the children to the dogs? Now, think about this scene, and you know me, I like to look for the humor. The disciples are hilarious here. The woman is following after Jesus saying, help me, and the disciples are saying, get rid of her. She's drawing attention to us. We're Jews. We don't belong here. And she's asking you for a favor. Put her away. Get rid of her. And what is it that turns Jesus around? What is it that impresses him? It is her faith. Even in the face of a supposed insult, calling her and her people dogs, this love that this woman has for her daughter and the faith that she has in Jesus as Lord, Son of David, is what convinces Jesus. It's what he is looking for, to demonstrate to his own disciples it's all about faith. It's not about being part of some special religious group that follows all these external rules. It is about faith in him and faith in God that matters. As we celebrate this Eucharist, and as we go about this coming week, maybe this is a good time for us to ask ourselves, what boundaries do we put around people? Not just geographical boundaries, but boundaries in our families, among our friends, at school, at work. Who are those who are in and those who are out? Who want to be in and we don't want them? How do we erase those human boundaries? God has not made those boundaries. We have. And maybe as we ask ourselves and examine our conscience, we should ask ourselves, what boundaries have I drawn this week? Who am I keeping out? Who am I welcoming in? God doesn't draw boundaries around people. We do.